Yeah. So we're at the final video then, the third video of 3 of scales. The first one was notes, how we organize the notes into scales, a few concepts and terms to know there. And then the second video was about scales, what constitutes a scale, do we have sharp notes, do we have flat notes, and all that. And in this video we're going to organize the scales. We organize them so that they make sense from a music point of view. So that you can use them, so that the scales become practical. And the tool that we're going to land on is the circle of fifth, which is an amazing model, I have to say, for music, and it's a good friend. And the more you know about music theory, the more you know about music, the more help you will get from that. So the circle of fifth really covers all the basics in music theory, and then you can just go away and hands from that. But enough talk from me. Now it's your turn. Let's get to it. Good luck. In the last video we concluded that we have 30 scales. We have 15 major scale, and all those scales have their relative minor. And for this video we wanna organize the scales in a more musical friendly manner, in a manner that we can work with as a musician. We have 30 scales, but we don't really need to work with all 30 scales. The relative minor is part of the major scale, so let's just focus on the major scales and work with that. So the idea here is to find scales that are more similar to one another and have them next to each other, and then organize them in that manner. So to do that we look at the natural notes, which would be the C major scale, and then we have the scale degree at the bottom there, and we looked at the distance between those notes. So we come into D and we look at the D scale. What does that look like? Compare that to the C, and then we look to the E scale and compare that to the C, and so forth. And what we're looking for is, of course, the number of sharps and number of flats in the scale. Sharps and flats matters. C major do not have any sharp notes or any flat notes, so obviously the difference between C major and any other scale would be the number of sharp notes or flat notes. And indeed we did find 2 candidates. The number 4, which is the F. The F is almost like the C. The F major scale is almost similar to the C major scale. The only difference is that the F has a B flat note at number 4 there. The C major scale do not have a B flat, it just has a B note. The same also with the G, the 5th note there. It is almost like a C major scale, with the exception of the F sharp at the bottom there. The C major do not have an F sharp. So these scales are very close to one another. Let's put the C scale in the middle, so we have the sharp on one side and the flats on the other side. And now we have the C in the middle. We have the F to the left and we have the G to the right. And the G in the C major scale, the 5th note in the G major scale was G, and that is the scale next to C. If we continue that and do it all over again with the G major scale, the 5th note in the G scale is the D, so next to the G major scale we have the D major scale. And if we were to do it again with the D major scale, the 5th note there is an A, so next to the D major scale would have been A major. That's outside the slide though. We can also look at the F, just for reference. The 5th note in an F is C, and that seems to fit with the C that we have, so that's okay. And the 5th in the B flat, if you see that furthest to the left, that is an F, so we would have a B flat scale there. But then on the other side of the C we have the F. F was on the 4th, yes, so that's why we have F there. The 4th from F is B flat. So B flat we have already on the other side, so that pattern seems to work. But then again, if we reference check back here from D major, from the scales that we have on the slide, the fourth on the D major is G, and G we have there, and the fourth in the G major is C, and surely enough it fits. So we have a pattern here. If you go from B flat and all the way till D, you count 5 between every scale. So in between C and G you would count C, D, E, F, G, and then you end up on G. And for the next one you would count G to D, there will be G, A, B, C, D, that is 5, so you end up on D. And the same also happens when you go from B flat to F, you count B, C, D, E, F, that is 5. On the other hand, if you go the other direction, you go towards F where it had the flats, that would be 4. So going from C to F, that is C, D, E, F, that is 4. Going from F to B flat, that would be F, G, A, B, B flat, and that is 4. And we can do the same also going from D, D, E, F, G, that is 4. G, A, B, C, that is 4. So going to the left means that we count every fourth, and going to the right means we count every fifth, and everything seems to fit, so we have a pattern. And when organizing the scales in this manner, a new pattern seems to reveal itself. So the G major scale is almost the same as the C major scale. The only difference is that the G major scale have an F sharp, the C major scale have an F natural. That's the only difference between those two. If we do the same and compare the G major scale with the D major scale, those two scales are also very like each other, very similar to one another. The only difference is that the D major scale have a C sharp note in it, the G major scale have a C natural. And if we go the other direction towards the flat side, we compare F major with the C major, and as we saw, those are very similar to one another, with the exception that the F major scale has a B flat note in it. The C major scale have a B natural note, and the B flat scale next to the F would be very similar to the F major scale, with the difference that the B flat major has an E flat note in it. The F major scale only has an E natural note there. And sure enough, we do have a pattern that repeats itself, as in so many cases when it comes to music theory. So we go every fifth to the right from the C major scale, and every major scale there will introduce a new sharp note. And once that note is introduced into the system, it will stay sharp. So going from all the way to the end there with the C sharp major, you'll see that all the notes are sharpened. And you can compare that to the C major scale, of course, who doesn't have any sharp notes at all. And the same phenomenon repeats itself on the left side, where we go every fourth on the flat side. So every new scale there introduced a new flat note, and once a flat note is introduced into the system, going every fourth, it stays flat. Now, all the way to the end there, the C flat major scale, all the notes are flattened. Compare that to the C major, who doesn't even have any flat notes at all. When organizing the scales in this way, you get a good reference for memory of what the scales are. So by looking at the counterpart, or the cross-reference, you can say. If you see the counterpart, the top there you have the C major scale. C major scale do not have any sharps or any flat notes whatsoever. The counterpart here is the C sharp scale, who has everything sharpened. And that's not so strange. But if you look at the next one, the B flat sorry, the F major scale has one B flat, yes, but the F sharp on the sharp side, the F sharp has everything sharp except for the B. The B is natural, and if you look at the B, you have the B and E natural there, but on the B flat side, the B and E are the flatted note. The other ones are the natural. And this will be true across the board. If you look at scales and their counterpart, like the F and the F sharp, or the E and the E flat, no matter where you look, if a note on the flat side is flattened in that scale, on its counterpart it will be natural. And if you look in any of the sharp scales, if you have notes there that are sharpened on the sharp scale, in its counterpart those notes will be natural on the flat side. And this is a good structure for memory if you want to remember the scales and what constitutes and what notes you have in the scales. So if you have flat notes on the B flat, which has B and E flat flatted in the B flat scale, B flat major, you know that the B is a sharp and the B major is a sharp, and the only natural notes they have is the B and the E. Rest of them will be sharp. And as we said before, once you have a sharp note or a flat note introduced to the system, it stays in the system. And also, you know that sharp notes and flat notes are the ones that we use to recognize key signatures for any scale. So putting those two together, we end up on this. If we start with the sharp line there, the F, C, G, D, A sharp, E sharp, B sharp, going to the G major scale, we know that what was significant for the G major scale is that it had one sharp. It was the F sharp. And what was significant for the D major scale was that it had two sharps. It has the F sharp and then it had the C sharp. And what is significant for the A major scale, it had three sharps: C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, and so on. So that is the key signature. The sharp line always goes in that direction. F, C, G, D, A, E, B sharp. So there is no key signature with the D sharp and the E sharp, because those two sharps comes in very late and in the middle. Any scale that has D sharp would start from E major scale, and then would be the D sharp would be in E major scale, B major scale, F sharp major scale, and C sharp major scale. The scale before that have D natural. So that is the key signatures for all the sharp notes, and the same applies on the flat side. It starts with B and it ends on the F flat, and it goes in that direction: B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat, and F flat. And the C flat major scale has everything flat, and the last flat that enters into the C flat major scale would be the F flat. Look at this a little while. What you also can see is that you have two lines here. You have F, and you have the sharp line, which starts with F, C, G, A, D, A, E, B. That is the sharp line. All of those notes are sharps that are introduced into the system, and they stay in the system. On the flat side, you have B, E, A, D, G, C, and F. And if you look carefully here now, you see they are in the exact same order. The only thing is that on the flat side, it is mirrored. So on the sharp, it starts with an F and it ends with a B. On the flat side, it starts with a B and it ends with an F. It is good to try to remember the flat line or the sharp line for the simple reason that the notes comes in that order, and they identify the key signature for a scale that you're playing in, that you will be playing. So just to remember them is a good idea. And if you play guitar or any fret instrument, that you're very fortunate for this reason. The only thing you need to do is to fret the first two higher string, the B and the E string there, so you would have an F and C ring out. And when you do that and you play from the high string to the low string, you would play out the sharp line, the F, C, G, D, A, B, E, and then the top string, if you had a 7th string guitar there, you would have a B string on top, so it's easy to remember. And playing that the opposite way, you would play the flat line, the B, E, A, D, G, C, and F. And when you play other instruments than guitar or any fret instrument, you might have to come up with another system to remember. Whatever system works for you, it's fine. There's absolutely no rule here. You want creativity, be creative. Personally, I would think of a sentence like faces can grow dark and even black. That's a very sharp line, I would say. Or maybe if you want to do the flat side, you can think of being excited and desire good collective fun. A little bit flat there, maybe, I don't know. But whatever you come up with, it's good. Once you have remembered the sharp line and the flat line, the next challenge comes. And this happens to all in the beginning. Okay, I know the sharp line, but I don't know what key am I in. So I have, but here's some tips for that. So the last sharp note that comes in is on the note 7, yes, and that's a half step from the key. So if the last sharp note that you come in with is a D sharp, then half step up is where the key is, E. And if you look at the first note there, the F sharp, that was the first one, and half note up is the G, and that is the scale, the G major scale. And the A sharp, when that comes in, it comes in on a B major scale, because A sharp is a half step lower than the key. And to remember the keys related to the flat line, you know that the new flat note comes in on the 4th note, and the 4th note is also what defines the next key. So if you know that F is the first scale, the first key, and significant for F is that you have a B flat, the B flat will be the next key. And the B flat, the significant for the B flat is that it has a B flat, yes, and an E flat. And the E flat is the next key. So the E flat is the next key, and it has an B flat, E flat, and an A flat, and so on. One other way to relate a key to its new flat is to simply count. You know, do remember that when we went left, we counted 4. So the distance between the F and the B flat and the E flat and the A flat and all those would be 4. Between F and B is 4. And between B flat and E flat is 4, and so forth. Then going back up again would be 5. So if you go from B flat to F, that's 5. B, E, B, C, D, E, F. That's 5. Remember? So if you come in on a G flat and you don't know what key that would be in, just count 5 from G flat. So that would be G, A, B, C, D, and then you're in a D flat. It makes sense to have the scales organized in this way. So much just falls out from it. But the question might be that is this all theoretical, or do you have any music in this? Where is the music? Well, the fact is that music is what carries the theory, and we can illustrate that by playing the chords. So if we play C major and then go to G major and D major and continues all the way to C sharp major and then go back again, that means that we play every fifth going one way and every fourth going back again. And then you can hear what it would sound like when we organize the scales in this way. I play not chords, but I play arpeggios, which means I use the chord notes, but I don't play them simultaneously. I break them up, so I play one chord at a time. So I will play 1 3 5 1, and then I will go to the next scale and play 1 3 1 1 3 5 1. And it's almost like you play a melody there. It fits very well. If you try to play two chords but with a little distance, let's say we play the C major chord and then we jump immediately to the F sharp. The F sharp have 6 sharp notes in it, so it's quite far from the C major, who has none, but it will sound like this. And if that was the effect that you were looking for, and then you do it, if you think that sounds odd, it doesn't really fit, but then you know why that is. It is because of the distance between the C major and the F sharp major. And what do you know? The whole time we've been dealing with the circle of fifth, and this is the circle of fifth. The only difference now is that we have actually made it into a circle. Before we just had them in a line next to each other. Now we have them in a circle. And this is the circle of fifth. From C at the top there you have no sharps, no flats, and the A minor is the relative minor. In the inner circle you see the sharp line starting with an F. This starts with an F and it ends with a B sharp. And on the flat side you have the flat line, starts with a B flat and it ends with an F flat. If you from C major, if you go clockwise, you count every 5, so that's the fifth, and then you end up with the G and the D and an A and so forth. And if you go anti-clockwise, you go towards F, then you count 4, and you go every 4th if you go every anti-clockwise. This is the circle of fifth. At the bottom there you see the enharmonic equivalent scale, so remember those B, B and C flat. B is a sharp scale, B is a scale with sharp notes in it. The C flat is obviously a flat scale, it has flat notes in it, but when you play them they sound exactly the same. It's just 2 different scales that sounds exactly the same. Same with the F sharp and the G flat. It's 2 different scales, but they sound exactly the same. One is on the sharp side, one is on the flat side. And the same also, of course, is with the C sharp and the D flat. 2 scales that sounds exactly the same, but they're different scale. One is on the sharp side, one is on the flat side. When you use the scale degree on the circle of fifth, you will be able to extract enormously amount of information from the circle of fifth. You will utilize it to its maximum with reference to the knowledge that you already have, of course, about music theory. Now we're doing scales. So let's look at the major scale, and you'll use those scale degree. The 1 is the root note. We just have to decide what scale we will look at. We look at the A major scale. and immediately when you put the 1 there, you know that the D is the 4th note and the E is the 5th note, and you know that the F sharp minor is the relative minor, and the F sharp, C sharp and G sharp is the key signature for A major and F sharp minor. And if you want to take an A major chord, you know that it's 1, 3, 5 are the chord notes. So A, C sharp and E would be the notes to take to play an A major chord. Poof! All that information just came using the scale degree and applied on the circle of fifth. Of course, you can do the same with a minor scale. The minor scale, then you use the mid circle there, the inner circle. So let's look at the G minor. We put the 1 on the G minor, and the C is the 4th note and the D is the 5th note. We know that immediately. We know that the B flat is the relative major. We know that the key signature for B flat and G minor is B flat and E flat. And if you want to play a G minor chord, you would use the 1, 3, 5. That would be G, B flat and D. Playing those chords, you have a G minor. This is a lot of information that you get from all the scales. So it's not dependent on one scale. You have them all 30 scales you can do this with. So that's a lot of information and a good advisory model for you going forward when you play whatever you play in the future. And of course, the more you progress in music theory and the more you play, the more you can extract from the circle of fifth. Then the next natural stop to look into for you would be chord progression. And good introductory to the chord progression would be to look, if you just Google the 4-chord songs, what is a 4-chord song? I'm not going to tell you, you will find it, but it is a good introduction into what chord progression is. I'm going to give you a hint a little bit later on. I also have another for your information before I leave you to your playing and the circle of fifth, and this regards the minor scales. So far we have talked about the major and the relative minor. We can call that the natural minor scale. That is the relative minor. And we saw the difference with the 3, 6 and 7. We saw that in the last video, so just a repetition here. And the major scale, the difference between a major scale and if you had the parallel minor, if you compare those two, the note 3, 6 and 7 would be lowered 1/2 step in a minor scale. So we have a major scale and a minor scale, but we also have back in the days, long in the days, when they start using minors, I think that was in the 1600s or so, they just discovered that the minor wasn't sufficient enough. So what they needed was a little bit more. And don't be surprised if you see the harmonic minor concept. It's actually another minor scale. It's not the natural minor scale, it's a harmonic minor scale. But the difference there is the 7. The harmonic minor scale has a major 7. If you, in chord progression, if you start using extended chord and playing 7th chord, like you have something called a dominant 7. The dominant 7 is when you play a major scale when you have a minor 7, right? That's a dominant 7. This is the opposite. You have a harmonic, the harmonic minor is a minor scale, but you have a major 7. And sometimes that is used, especially in jazz and blues. That will pop up a little bit from now and on. So don't be surprised if that happens, but as long as you know what that is. And you also have something called a melodic minor, which is more used for melodies in when you play melodies in minors. The idea here is that you lift up the note 6 and the note 7 1/2 step compared to a natural minor, but this only applies when you go up. When you go down again, you go down like you do on the natural minor, but when you go up, you lift up the 6th note and the 7th note. So these 3 minors, the melodic minor, the harmonic minor and the natural minor, I think at least for the harmonic minor and the melodic minor, it would be good for you to know that they exist, sometimes in the future you will surely jump on them and be an expert on them. And another for your information going forward is to talk about modes. Modes, basically, if you remember that when we talked about the minor scale is the same, use the same notes as the relative major, but it comes in later. It comes in on 6. Yes, the modes are really the same. They come in on 2, they come in on 3, they come in on 4, they come in on 5. 6 is the relative minor, so we know that, but also come in on 7. They all have names, fancy names. Aeolian is the major scale, and the Aeolian is the relative minor scale. That's the 6th one. And anything that we build from here will be built from the C major scale. And on 2 there you have the Dorian scale, and then it's actually a Dorian D minor, but it's not a D minor because the D minor would have a B flat, but the Dorian scale uses the same notes as the C major scale, so the B is a B. That means that the B is lifted up, and that is the signum for the Dorian. The 6 is lifted up 1/2 step. It's a minor scale, and you will see soon why it's a minor scale. The 3rd one there is the Phrygian E minor. Phrygian E minor is not a normal E minor. The E minor 2nd note would be an F sharp, but we don't have F sharp in C major scale, so we're building this from C. So that means that the 2nd note is lowered 1/2 step. That is the Phrygian scale, Phrygian E minor, and the Phrygian E minor must be built from the C. The Dorian D minor must be built from the C. If you had a D scale here, if the first one was a D major, we look from a D major, the Dorian would be an E. And on 4 you have the Lydian F, and the Lydian F, the F, normal F, would have a B flat, but we see it doesn't have a B flat, so the B have to be lifted up to B. That is the Lydian. The 4th note is lifted 1/2 step. And then you have the Mixolydian, G in this case. Then we talk about the 7th note. The G would have an F sharp, but we don't have an F sharp, so we have to lower that 1/2 step to an F. So Mixolydian is the major scale with the lowered 7/2 step. And if you know this anything, when you have a major scale with a minor 7, because that is in fact what it is, it's called the dominant 7. So Mixolydian is a dominant 7 scale, if you want. We haven't talked about the Locrian then. The Locrian is a little bit special. It's more of a diminished chord, very seldomly used. It lowers the 3rd and the 5th note, and I will spare you that until the next slide. So presenting the modes this way, it will tell you if we have a major or a minor mode. So with the focus here on the 1, 4, 5, you see that and you look on the 3rd notes and the scale degree there, both the E, A, and B, they would be on the right side. That means that we have a major scale, and the Dorian, the Phrygian, and the Aeolian scale, they would be on the left side. They're red there, so that is the minor. The 3rd one is lowered 1/2 step, so that is the minor scale. And then you have the Locrian at the end. Yeah, that looks like a minor if you look at the 3rd note, but the 5th note is actually lower the 5th as well. So it's not a minor, it's actually a diminishing chord, and that is what the small o next to the B tells you. And this is another small giveaway. You remember that I said that the next probable stop for you, natural stop in music theory, will be chord progression. Well, here you have chord progression scale, you have a chord scale. But if you look at this, is exactly what you do in a chord progression scale when you take out a chord scale. You take the notes, the first note you take 1, 3 and 5, and then you move the second note into number 1, and then you take 1, 3 and 5 from that, and you do the same and the same all over again. And what you get is it's the following. You get the C major, the D minor, the E minor, the F major, the G major, the A minor, and the B diminished chord. That is the chord scale, and that is what is used for chord progression. It could be a good introductory for you moving forward. One also thing that you can notice is that when we number them, we don't use scale degrees in that sense. We use Roman figures, and when using Roman figures, we're actually talking about chords and chord scales. And if you have a capital Roman figure like you have on the 1, the 4 and the 5, that will indicate that you have a major chord. And if you have lowercase Roman figures like you have in 2, 3, 6 and also 7, that would indicate that you have a minor chord. But the 7th is not really a minor chord, it is a diminished chord, and sometimes on a 7 you will have the 7 with the small o on top there, just to indicate that that is a diminished chord. And but then again, you know that the 6 is the relative minor, and the relative minor in chord progression is A minor, exactly the way it is. So good luck in the future. With the chord progression. And again, as I said, using the chord progression, using the chord scales, you can all come back to the circular fifth. So if you pause this slide a bit and you see the chord scale for C major there, you can compare that what it actually look like when you look up in the circular fifth. It is also a good introduction for the chord progression moving forward. So there we have it. You are finished with the course. Thank God. You've done well, I'm sure. Hope everything will be fine with you. Please leave a comment if you have any questions, or if you think there's things I can do better. I would love to read those comments. Have a good one. Thank you. Yeah, the 2 typos. Okay, up here. F, not G. The top notes on the top line and the staff there, it must be an F. It's not a G. And the 2 sharp signs there that give you the key signatures, it cannot be G and B. It have to be an F and C. If it is 2 sharps, it must be F and C, and they are D and B minor. The key, but the G and B, no, cannot be. The flat signs that are okay. Have a good one. Thank you.